Hi, I'm Angel Nightingale. Welcome to Tales Around the World. This is a story I've written. Please like and subscribe and enjoy. Have a beautiful day to each and everyone. The name of this story is Princess Emily.
After Prince David and Princess Emily got married and rode off in the sunset and unto their new lives, well, we taught that all would be well. The first 3 months after the wedding, Prince David and Princess Emily was extremely happy. Living in their new palace, Prince David's father, the king, gave over his crown to Prince David, making Prince David the new king of Romanov. That also meant that Princess Emily became Queen of Romanov. King David and Queen Emily of Romanov. They both were extremely happy and had more responsibilities to their kingdoms. Queen Emily's father and mother joined their kingdoms in union with the marriage of both families. The new king, David of Romanov, had many responsibilities as king and had to travel to many cities far and wide. Queen Emily and King David still kept a happy relationship and would take lovely walks in the woods among nature, enjoying all the beautiful birds singing and butterflies. Queen Emily and King David love each other dearly. Meanwhile, deep in the dark, evil forest, where Princess Elizabeth was banished, Princess Elizabeth lives in an old cottage. Princess Elizabeth was filled with so much hate against her sister. Now Queen Emily and Princess Elizabeth hated her father and mother also. She vows that she would do anything to destroy them all, including King David and his family. Because Princess Elizabeth was so wicked and full of hate, the once beautiful princess becomes an ugly creature. Princess Elizabeth, after years of living in the dark and evil forest, found an old witch and asked the old witch for the power to destroy her family. The old witch gave Princess Elizabeth magical powers to do as she wishes, but when Princess Elizabeth received these magical powers, it made her become a hideous creature. This made Princess Elizabeth even more evil and full of hate. Princess Elizabeth had the power to disguise herself as anyone. This gave her a terrible but great idea. Princess Elizabeth had a devious plan. Princess Elizabeth was aware that Queen Emily still goes to the woods and listens to birds singing and butterfly sightings. Princess Elizabeth was anxiously waiting and planning to attack at any time. Princess Elizabeth waits for the day when Queen Emily would eventually go to the woods alone, and then she would carry out her plan. Princess Elizabeth laughs wickedly. 2 weeks has passed by, and Princess Elizabeth was getting impatient because Queen Emily was never alone when she visits the woods. Then one day, Queen Emily felt a little carefree. King David traveled to another city to do his kingly duty. Queen Emily decided to take a nature walk in the woods. Princess Elizabeth, waiting patiently to attack. Princess Elizabeth disguised herself as Queen Emily's mother and waited for Queen Emily to come closer, while she hides in the bushes. Queen Emily was enjoying the beautiful butterflies and flowers and the birds singing. Then Queen Emily got startled. She heard rustling in the bushes and asked who's there. Then, to Queen Emily's surprise, she saw her mother, the Queen. Queen Emily was shocked. She said, "Mother, is that you?" Then Princess Elizabeth said, "Yes, my daughter. It's me. I was visiting at your home when I saw you strolling off to the woods, so I followed you. Sorry if I scare you, darling." Queen Emily then breathes a sigh of relief and hugged her mother. Princess Elizabeth smiled wickedly behind Queen Emily's back. Then Princess Elizabeth, still in disguise, told Emily that she bought her some berries. She knew it was her favorite. Queen Emily was smiling happily, and she thanked her mother for the berries. Princess Elizabeth pretended to eat some of the berries, and eventually Queen Emily started to eat also. But then Queen Emily started to feel really sick. She started to feel like she was floating, and the woods seems to be spinning in her head, and eventually Queen Emily fainted and fell to the ground. Princess Elizabeth starts laughing and threw Queen Emily onto a horse and rode off into the dark and evil forest. Queen Emily awakes to see only darkness around her, and she heard growling and scratching. Queen Emily was very scared. Her heart was racing, and she started to pray silently. Then Queen Emily heard footsteps, and it was getting closer and closer until she felt someone breathing behind her neck. Queen Emily starts screaming. Then she saw a dim light came on, and she soon realized that she was in a cave. Then Queen Emily heard a familiar voice. It said, "Shut up, you foolish girl." Queen Emily then knew that the voice is none other than her sister Princess Elizabeth. Queen Emily shouts out Elizabeth. Then she heard a growl, and the Princess Elizabeth answers yes. "How did you know?" Queen Emily reply, "You're my sister. I've known you all my life. I was but no longer your sister. Remember, I'm banished to this faith by your father and mother. Remember Emily." "Oh, should I say Queen Emily?" Queen Emily said, "It's your father and mother too." Elizabeth growled and threw a tree branch at the wall. Queen Emily jumps out of the way just in time. Elizabeth then said, "You are wrong. They are nothing to me. You're nothing to me. You think you can recognize me now, Queen Emily?" Princess Elizabeth stand under the dim light, reflected through the mouth of the cave, and reveal a hideous monster. Queen Emily screamed and cried, "What have you done, Elizabeth?" Queen Emily was scared. Elizabeth growled and said, "What's wrong, Queen Emily? Aren't you feeling well?" Queen Emily was feeling sick again, and she asked Elizabeth, "What have you done to me?" Elizabeth replied, "The berries was poison, only have a week to live." Elizabeth growled and laughed wickedly. Queen Emily said, "Oh no, please don't do this, Elizabeth. I'm your sister." Elizabeth growled and laughed. "The only thing that can help you is a special rose. It's magical and can only be gotten from a fairy. No such luck in this dark forest." Elizabeth growled and laughing. Queen Emily eventually fainted. Meanwhile, back at King David and Queen Emily Palace, King David returned from his trip and soon missed Queen Emily. King David asked the whole of the palace, "Where has Queen Emily gone to?" No one in the palace knew where Queen Emily was. King David sent his knights out to find Queen Emily, but no one could find her. King David sent a messenger to journey to Queen Emily's mother and father to find out if she went to visit them. But the messenger returned to King David and said that Queen Emily never visited her father and mother. King David really started to worry. Princess Elizabeth heard they were looking for Queen Emily. She laughs. She had Queen Emily tied to an old chair made from a tree. Princess Elizabeth told Queen Emily that she is going to disguise herself as Queen Emily and get close to King David and kill him. And she would kill everyone Queen Emily loves and make it look like Queen Emily killed them all. Queen Emily begged Elizabeth, "Please don't do this, Elizabeth. Please, it's not too late. I can ask father and mother to give you a chance, and we can be a family again." Princess Elizabeth replied, "Shut up, Queen Emily. I hate you and your family and all that you love." Princess Elizabeth, growling and laughing. She then did a magical wave and made herself look just like Queen Emily. Queen Emily was shocked and begged Princess Elizabeth to stop this madness. But Elizabeth just walked away, leaving Queen Emily crying and screaming, but no one could hear her. King David stepped outside the palace, only to see in the distance Queen Emily running towards him. King David was relieved and was running towards her. They meet and hug each other. King David looked at Queen Emily and asked where you were. "What happened? We were all worried about you. We look everywhere." Elizabeth, disguised as Queen Emily, replied, "I went further into the woods, following a beautiful bird, and eventually realized I was lost. Then I fell in a hole. I managed to get out and wandered around until I finally found my way back home." King David said, "I'm so happy you're okay and you're back home safely. Why did you go out to the woods on your own?" Elizabeth, as Queen Emily, said, "I'm so sorry, my love and my king. I promise I'll never go in the woods alone ever again." King David hugged Queen Emily, or so he thought at the moment, and gave her a kiss. King David felt a bit strange, for he knew how his beloved Emily felt, but he ignored the feeling. He then walked Queen Emily to her room. and left her to take a bath and rest. He sent a messenger to give a message to the King and Queen of Queen, Emily, that she is found and safe. Elizabeth, still in disguise, laughing to herself that her plan is going great. She took a bath and quickly dressed and disguised herself again as Queen Emily. Then she went to join King David for dinner. King David was happy to see Queen Emily, and they began to eat. Soon they bid each other good night. Meanwhile, in the dark forest, the real Queen Emily, planning on how to escape and get to her beloved King David and save her family from her wicked sister, Elizabeth. Queen Emily looked all over the cave to find a way to escape, and finally she found a crack in the cave wall hidden by an old tree branch. The crack was big enough to squeeze through and get outside, but Queen Emily started to feel very sick and eventually fainted again. A new day at the palace. King David was feeling happy and full of hope once more after finally found his beloved Queen Emily. Or so he thought. King David invited Queen Elizabeth to dinner, but he had a surprise for Queen Emily. When Elizabeth, disguised as Queen Emily, arrived at the dining table, she saw a strange little girl sitting at the dining table. Elizabeth, looking like Queen Emily, didn't recognize the little girl and asked Prince David if the little girl was his sister. King David said, "That's Millie. Don't you recognize her, little?" Millie was looking at Queen Emily strangely because she felt something wasn't right. King David couldn't help but feel like something was wrong. Then Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, said, "I'm so sorry, I must have hit my head when I fell in the hole. Please forgive me, little girl." King David said, "This is little Millie from the orphanage, remember?" Then Elizabeth said, "Oh yes, I now remember. Millie, so nice to meet you." Millie frowned and then smiled and said, "I'm glad to see you again, Sister Emily." "Queen Emily," said Elizabeth. "I'm Queen Emily now." Millie frowned again and then smiled and said, "Okay, Queen Emily." Elizabeth smiled wickedly. Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, excused herself from the dining table and went upstairs. King David felt confused. Little Millie then said to King David, "That lady is not Sister Emily. Sister Emily could never forget about me. She loves me. She didn't even ask about my brothers." King David said Queen Emily isn't herself, but soon she'd be okay again. Millie Ride came to pick her up, to carry her home. Before she left, Millie told King David to be careful. She's not the real Queen Emily. King David was shocked, but he ignored the warning. Later that night, whilst King David sat on a chair, unknowingly, Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, sneaked up behind King David with a sword and was going to kill him, and same time one of the kitchen maids opened the door unannounced and interrupted Elizabeth's plan. Elizabeth threw the sword quickly aside and shouted at the kitchen maid, "Don't you know you must knock? Before entering a room, I should fire you." King David was startled because he only now realized that Queen Emily was in the room with him all this time. Then King David said, "No, you don't fire anyone." Elizabeth growled, still in disguise, tried to control herself. Elizabeth took a deep breath. "I am queen. I can do anything I want," and stomp out the door. King David and the kitchen maid both looked confused. "Queen Emily, don't act like that." Then King David noticed the sword on the ground, and he remembered. Just before the door flew open, he heard a clank noise, and he realized it was the sound of the sword hitting the ground. He then asked the kitchen maid what she saw, and she confirmed that, when she opened the door, she saw Queen Emily holding a sword like she was ready to strike. King David couldn't believe what he was hearing. This can't be true. How could my beloved Emily want to kill me? Then King David remembered what little Millie said before she left. After the kitchen maid left the room, King David called some of his knights and let them know what happened with Queen Emily. He told them he suspects that she is an impostor, that she is not the real Queen Emily. King David told the knights to keep an eye on Queen Emily and watch out for him and protect him. King David was a bit aware of Queen Emily and didn't sleep in the same room that night. A new day, and Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, went to King David and asked why he never came to sleep in their room. King David quickly made an excuse and said he had some work to do. He had a function to prepare for and needed to make sure he was prepared for the speech. Elizabeth growled, still disguised as Queen Emily, said, I understand, and I'm sorry about my behavior last night. I love my king. King David tried his best to smile and said, I love you to my queen. Elizabeth smiled wickedly. Then the king said he has some duties to fulfill and he will be back later in the evening. Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, smiled and said, Okay, my king. See you soon. King David briefly kissed Queen Emily on her cheeks and left. Meanwhile, the real Queen Emily finally got out of the cave and was walking through the dark and evil forest, trying to find her way out. Eventually, she found a track that Elizabeth's horse left behind, and she followed the horseshoe's print until she finally saw her way out of the dark forest. Just then, Queen Emily felt sick and fainted again. Meanwhile, King David ordered some of his knights to search the woods where Queen Emily always nature walk. They obeyed the king. King David then ordered his other knights to follow him to the dark and evil forest. The knights was worried, but they listened to the king and followed him to the dark forest. Just then, King David saw a piece of cloth under some branches. King David and his knights removed the branches, only to discover the real Queen Emily under the branches. She was really sick. King David knelt to the ground beside Queen Emily and held her tightly and cried. King David's knights told him, we need to get her somewhere safe and take care of her, or she can die. King David then gathered his strength and agreed with the knights. They carried Queen Emily to one place where no one would expect her to be, to little Millie and her 4 brothers. King David and his knights rode quickly on a carriage and went straight to little Millie and her 4 brothers' house. Little Millie was surprised to see King David and told her brothers. They all came out the house to greet King David. King David then lifted Queen Emily's limp body from the back of the carriage and quickly rushed inside Millie's house. Millie and her 4 brothers were shocked to see Queen Emily, their beloved sister Emily, in such a state. The brothers asked King David what happened, and King David told them everything that happened. He also said there's an imposter posing as Queen Emily at his palace and that she tried to kill him. Little Millie looks at King David and he said, Millie, you were right about everything. I need all of you to help me. I ask you all if Queen Emily could stay here until she is well again. The 4 brothers and Millie say yes without hesitation. They said they would do anything for Queen Emily. They also said that they would protect Queen Emily with their lives. King David was relieved and pleased. He thanks little Millie and her 4 brothers. It was getting late, so King David sent 2 of his knights to go to the palace and tell the fake Queen Emily that he will return tomorrow evening, that he had some unfinished business development and had to attend urgently. The 2 knights returned to the palace. Elizabeth, still disguises as Queen Emily, asked the 2 knights for King David. The 2 knights told Elizabeth exactly what King David ordered them to tell her, and Elizabeth believed their story. Meanwhile, back at Millie's house, King David and Millie and her 4 brothers trying to figure out how to save Queen Emily's life. The next morning, Queen Emily opens her eyes, still very sick and weak. Wake up to see she was in a strange room. King David was sleeping on a chair at the side of her bed. She recognized him and called his name David. She started to cry. King David wakes up at once and reached Queen Emily's side. King David answered, my love, how are you feeling? Queen Emily can hardly keep her eyes open, but she managed to speak. She told King David she doesn't have much time to live. She said Elizabeth is responsible for poisoning her, and she plans to kill them all. Queen Emily then told King David that Elizabeth told her the only thing that can save her is a magical rose and that only fairies knows where it can be found. Then Queen Emily fainted again. A new day has come. King David was really worried about his beloved Queen Emily. She was getting worse, and King David feared that Queen Emily could possibly die. King David sent 2 more of his knights to go to his palace and tell the fake Queen Emily that King David said to bring her to him, that he has a wonderful surprise for her. Then he told the knights to take her to a dungeon and tell her that kind David will soon be there, and quickly locked her up in the magical dungeon where she can never use her magic. The 2 knights went to the palace and managed to convince Elizabeth, still disguised as Queen Emily, and she fell for the trick. When they managed to get Elizabeth to go inside the dungeon, she realized it was a trap, but it was too late. The knights ran out of the room and quickly locked the door. Elizabeth growled and tried to change into a monster, but she couldn't. She tried again and again, but she couldn't use her magic. Elizabeth growled and screams and tried with all her might to change into a beast. She managed to change back to her true self as a hideous creature and tried her very best to break through the magical dungeon, but she couldn't. Eventually, Elizabeth growled and screams and started to cry. There was no escaping magical dungeon. Meanwhile, while King David and the other knights went in search of the magical forest to find the fairies and get the magical rose to save Queen Emily's life, Queen Emily doesn't have much time left to live. She only has 1 day left. King David was worried that they would never find this magical forest. Then he remembered a story Queen Emily told him a long time ago, that she believes that the butterflies can lead you to the fairies, and dragonflies are fairies. He laughed and shook his head. King David then told the knights to follow him, that he knows where to find the magical forest. King David led the knights to the woods where Queen Emily always nature walk, and they walked for miles on end. It seems like forever. Night was quickly coming, and the knights was getting restless and started to tell King David how sorry they were, but it doesn't look like they would ever find the fairies. Just then, King David and his knights saw a swarm of fireflies flickering in the sky in a circular motion. Then the fireflies flew quickly through the bushes. King David followed, and his knights also. Then King David and his knights saw fairies singing and playing and butterflies dancing. And yes, Queen Emily was right. The fairies are really dragonflies. The fairies quickly noticed that they were seen and rushed to fly away, but King David managed to capture one of the fairies. King David had one of the fairies in his hand and told the fairy that he would not harm him, that he needs his help. The fairy only cared about flying away, but realized couldn't escape. The king's grip. The fairy then spoke. "What do you want from me?" Then King David said to the fairy, "Queen Emily is dying, and the only thing that can save her is the magical rose only you can find. Please help me, help her. Please help me, help her, please." The fairy was shocked for a moment, then said, "Queen Emily, the girl who always come visit these woods and sing and dance with the butterflies." King David said yes. "She's the one." The rest of the fairies quickly came back, hearing everything that King David said. They all seemed to know of Queen Emily. One of the fairies said, "She saved my life. I was down by the stream, and the current pulled me under. Then a hand pulled me out of the water. It was Emily. She was so kind. We will help you." King David was relieved and happy. One of the fairies gave King David the magical rose and told him to rest the rose on Queen Emily's chest, and it would heal her at once. King David thanks the fairies. King David and his knights rush off to get to Millie's house to save Queen Emily. King David and his knights reach Millie's house very early in the morning. When King David arrived at Millie's house, everyone was awake and they were all crying silently. King David said, "We got the rose. Why are you all crying?" Millie and her 4 brothers said, "It's too late. She is dead." King David rushed to Queen Emily's side and rested the magical rose on her chest, held Emily's hand, kissed it, and started to cry. He begged Emily to come back to him and told her how much he loves her, and that fairies are real, that she was right about them. Then King David felt a hand touch his head and realized that Queen Emily was alive. King David hugged Queen Emily tightly and kissed her. Queen Emily is alive and healthy once more. Millie and her 4 brothers were so happy that Queen Emily is alive and well. They all cried with happiness and celebrate. News came quickly to Queen Emily's mother and father, and the whole of the kingdom celebrate. Meanwhile, back at the magical dungeon, where Elizabeth was held, King David and his knights paid her a visit only to find Elizabeth gotten very old and was dead. King David and his knights buried Elizabeth in the dark and evil forest. A week after Queen Emily's return, King David invited Queen Emily to a secret place where they can see the stars outside, which Queen Emily loves stargazing. But King David had a surprise for Queen Emily. Queen Emily was greeted by one of the fairies, and she thanked them all for saving her life. One of the fairies said, "You saved our lives many times in the woods, and we are forever grateful to you." Queen Emily thanked the fairies, and they flew off back to the forest. King David and Queen Emily danced under the stars and shared a kiss, and they lived happily ever after. The end.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and please leave a comment. Love you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.